In a shelter of cupped rock, nailed with white painted cottages to the cliff, he had met a fisherman. His boredom had been like bait to the old seaman, who was hiding his own endless tedium in the morbid actions of work. They had talked intermittently, dribbling sentences into the sand for each to watch without comment. The tide had receded and given a bellowing space to their breath, letting speech occur in salty bubbles. The highlight of the interaction had been in the contents of a battered pail of slopping brine, fetched by the fisherman and dramatically screwed into the sand for his young mind's attention. A clunking, pissing sound had come scratching from the bucket. He was instantly hooked. Walking over to look inside, he saw 5 crabs of various sizes, struggling against the limited water and the steep tin sides of their containment. "Are they trying to escape?" he stuttered. "Trying to get out?" "Aye," the fisherman nodded after a tobacco pause. "But why can't they do it?" he asked. "There are more of them than the water." "They be Manx crabs," said the man. "See, every time one crawls up and nearly escapes, the others drag it back down." Even as a boy, he had recognized this, known it to be as true as the ocean, and he had been instantly grateful for an adult fact. He had known, even then, that he would use it all his life. He had never looked back. I needed to open with the crab thing because is that a common metaphor? I thought that this book invented the metaphor, the crabs pulling each other down the bucket, as like a social commentary. Our own conflict keeps us from rising up. Also a really interesting commentary on codependency, which is kind of a theme that will arise a lot in this exploration. But that was the first time I ever heard it, 3 years ago when I read this book, whatever. And then someone at work mentioned it too. And I was like, wait a minute, did I mention that? And then you mentioned it back? Or is that a thing people know? Or does it just so happen like you read the Vorrh too? So I'm very confused. Is the crabs pulling each other? Did this book rip that off? Or is that like an original thing in the book? I don't know. But I thought it was really cool. Crab metaphors. Man, cut it out. Man, somehow it's 2:00 in the morning, and I've been wanting to do this book review, this upside down, right side up old book. You know, one time, gosh, I really embarrassed myself doing that once. Look at how smart this book is. Don't bring that up. So listen, I could go on for 3 hours about The Vorrh by Brian Catling. So I'm going to try and keep it to about a half hour. But understand, I could keep going. And there are 3 of these books. Just a second. 3 of these amazing books. It is, in a sense, a trilogy of books. 1, 2, and 3. The Vorrh trilogy. This is a thing you've probably never heard of. I had never heard of it. However, I would consider this an excellent example of level 7 Teal Meme integral fiction. This is a fantasy-ish novel. I'm always kind of looking for the integral novel. What is the integral story? There's a lot of great examples. We've listed a lot of them on our channel here. This book, in my opinion, is a contender for the integral fantasy novel. The other reason I really like this book is as an aesthetician, boy, that word's hard to say. I tend to like things with a really big ratio of how good it is to how appreciated it is. I would say that is how I evaluate art in general, from movies to music to writing. I like good stuff, but if everyone likes it, then I'm like, okay, that's good on the praise. That gets enough. Taylor Swift has enough fans. Her music's great. I don't have any issue with it. But if there is a Pepsi Cola to her that's equally good, I would tend to choose that way. And in fact, I would choose all the way down to some local star in my local town at my local level that I would root for because that person isn't a billionaire. You know what I mean? And that goes all the way. I've played in the music scene. It's a tragic place. When you get to know certain scenes, you realize that a lot of things don't make it out of the local scene that are as good or better than the things that do make it out there. This book, The Vorrh, is like so weird. Like I couldn't find like a chapter summary for it. There's definitely people talking about it. It is like a cult. This one, I don't actually know how to read these. So first release 2007. That's fine. So these are recent books, and it's like the best book I've ever read that no one's ever heard of. Generally, when I read a book that there weren't a lot of people who recommended it to me, it's a bad book in general. Like, just as a rule of thumb, it's almost never good. At like 10 recommends, it's usually like gonna be 50-50 on being good. This was one that came out of nowhere. I'd never heard of it. I'm like, what the heck is that? This book is deeply, deeply personal to me. It echoes intense, heavy themes in my life. It really speaks to me on a soul level, I would say. I really feel this book. So this is one of those things, like Wonderful. I had them on the show for an interview. They're my favorite band. Biggest ratio of how good they are to how known they are. I'm not saying they're not known. I am saying they're incredibly, incredibly good. My favorite band. I consider them the best band I've ever heard. They have like the smallest following I could imagine for being as good as they are. And I could go into more of these, but it's not really a recommendation that you do the same. People say I'm a snob or a hipster or something with all that, but it really is out of compassion for artists, those who have something really unique and compelling to say that might not appeal to like the masses, for example. So the quick and dirty is that I had a 2-year-long, really, really intense, really committed, really awesome, really loving relationship with a person who was my intellectual and spiritual equal. It was just an amazing experience. A big part of that was that we read these books together and we kind of explored them together. And at the time, I was just starting this channel, kind of figuring out what it was. I had suggested we do this review together. So when we broke up, then it was like, oh man, I mean, as much as this sucks, also I wanted to review that book and we never got around to it. And it was like, man, I read all the books, we had it all prepared, we had it all like figured out and everything, or I did, and just never happened. So next thing you know, I'm like trying to get all my friends to read the book, and maybe they'll love it too, and they'll want to do it with me. So now it's like several years after that, and I started reading the book again because I'm like, okay, now I'm like forgetting the book. It just became clear to me that I really wanted to do this book review. I really wanted to share this weird cult book with the world. And I need to do it like now, or I'll just like move on to other things and I'll forget about the book all over again. I want to be clear, like when I do these kind of reviews and stuff, I kind of hate plot summary. That just irritates me. It's like, if I want the plot, this is the book. You read the book for the plot. People differ on that. I mean, I'll give you some really mild to indicate what I'm talking about, but what I get out of this book is really the themes, and it introduces some kind of interesting conceptual themes. If you're kind of using this video as a companion, or you got inspired by this video to read the book, I feel like the stuff I'm pointing out is kind of interesting because I've now read the book twice, and I have to say, the first time I read the book, I was just so like perplexed and just like, where is this going and how does it end and does everything resolve and like, what's the deal with this? Now that I've read all 3 books, I kind of know where everything's going to go, and I'm more caring about the themes and not the mysteries and things like that quite as much. I'm just more exploring it as art now. So in the second pass, I'm actually understanding what it's trying to do a lot better. And this is, these sorts of things that I like, these things that I find compelling, they tend to have that replayability that subsequent readings, subsequent listens, subsequent watchings will reveal deeper and deeper layers to the thing. And I feel like this book is, you could just go deeper and deeper with a lot of the stuff in this. And at the same time, it never just comes right out and says, this is the point, this is what it's about. But it's very directional in the interpretive framework. Even if it doesn't fill in all the bubbles for you, it lets you know kind of what the turf is. So as always, this is Unthink Me. I'm Adam. Get pumped. Woo! For your stuffed animal friends. Cody Arbuckle's a great example. He's a little horse. He's just, doing his best, and he's just wonderful, and everyone loves him, and he loves to dance. And this could be you. Woo! Get pumped. All right, so this is Unthink Me. We talk about integral theory. Please hit the like, subscribe, comment, just hit the stuff. It does nothing to you, and it makes my channel bigger. Even if you don't like me, even if you don't care about this, it's a really important thing to get this information out there. It's not really available in a lot of places, so I'm doing my best to make it available, and this is my best. I'm sorry about that. Yeah. Where the love stuff does become relevant, and integral theory, I would say that this book is a really cool exploration of romanticism. It's a really cool exploration of what we could call ascending and descending spiritual paths. We don't see one of them as better or worse than the other. We recognize them as ascending and descending. The ascender's path assumes that there's a sort of future mystery that we're seeking, that we're moving toward, that our actions are the thing that will be the spiritual essence. The descending path kind of has the opposite assumption, that this is something that we've lost, that this is something that we return to. It's something from the past. It's something of an origin. So the descenders are looking back in time, back into the lower levels. The ascenders are looking forward in time, forward through the higher levels. We notice in spirituality, spiritual communities, some of them are doing this sort of unlock your potential, this is the future, create a new world, this is the new message. And some of them are kind of the opposite, like getting back to nature, back to spirit, back to God, coming home to Jesus, that kind of thing. Backward, lower levels, more fundamental, more origin-ish, more creator-ish rather than creative. So both ways to express spirituality. Watch yourself for which of those you kind of neglect or overplay. I myself am definitely the futurist. I am definitely the ascender to a fault. And my ex-partner, Celesta, let's say, was definitely a descender, was seeing that wisdom in more primitive cultures, more simple lifestyles, sort of an anti-intellectual, anti-reason, both in the trans and the pre-sense, that was at odds with my own purely analytical, critical view of spirituality and philosophy. And yet we had this amazing harmony and we learned so much from each other. And that is the core dynamic of everything that happens in this book. The colonial industrializing city of Essenwald at the edge of the ancient, never-ending spiritual mystical forest of the Vorrh. A central theme of this book, strange as it is binocular vision, and how that suggests, how your eyes are connected backward, suggesting the bicameral brain, as opposed to a monological brain, which would then be a cyclops with one eye and not halves communicating, but just a one-dimensional thing. And in the book series, the cyclops is sort of an experimental attempt to create the ultimate ascender. And their hope is that this ascender will somehow use the Vorrh to ascend society, the colonial purpose. In a broader sense, vision is completely central to the story, as this Cyclops character, this experimental child raised by robots he's kind of a narcissist, and it's always kind of promised that it's this great gift, that he's the one kind of thing, but he's kind of just a jerk to everybody. He just kind of uses everyone and does irresponsible things to everybody. So here we see that in that monological, that goal-driven, that ascender style, there is that original sin as well. And this is clearly a theme in the story, original sin. There's a lot of Eden themes in this story. The Vorrh supposedly houses Eden itself, and fallen angels, and God, and Adam, and all this. The story never really takes one of them as true or the other. The colonial Christian ideas and the native indigenous views of what the forest is and what it means, and their deeper rooted mysticism where they actually understand the forest and its ways better. Nevertheless, they just integrate those two views, and both the colonists and the Africans are kind of understanding it from this integrated way, that it's sort of both things at once. It is the Christian mythology, and it is the indigenous spiritual animism. And the idea is that these different peoples are interpreting it on their own level. So what's the spiritual thing is being interpreted at different levels, just like states of consciousness. This book does an amazing job of weaving together amber meme mythology concepts with magenta meme indigenous magical concepts into something that actually kind of feels real and compelling, and it doesn't force one way or the other. It allows both of them to exist, and it explains both of those in terms of one another, so that it almost lends more support to both of these ideas. It's a very strange concept, and it includes like science fiction-y kind of ways of presenting that, and fantasy ways of presenting that, and mystical ways. So lots of different ways of exploring how there might be more in common between the magical understanding and the mythical understanding, and we begin to grasp sort of those connections between those things and the actual rational reality of the objective world that underlies those things and creates those psychological predilections of our species. This book finds just beautiful ways to explore ascending and descending all the way. I mean, it goes really deep with this stuff and just invites you to search for meaning in this and to make your own sense of it. Because as I said, it's depicting that sort of magenta red meme indigenous belief. It's depicting that amber-orange colonist belief, and it's written from level 7, teal. So it's kind of covering the whole spectrum, except for green meme. And this is a kind of really funny point. Like the criticisms I've seen in this book are that it's like shallow in its treatment of Africa, because it's not making any moral statement whatsoever. This is the setting. You have post-World War I colonists in Africa, and you have African people. So it's an ugly situation, and the book just, doesn't really dwell on it, but depicts it. That is just the setting. I mean, it's not really explored morally that much. The book isn't really about that. And so it's really funny that there's no green meme critic that'll be able to get it past that. They feel like it's missed the mark, and they have no like concept of what it's actually saying. It's a pale imitation of Heart of Darkness. And the funny thing about that is specifically the book includes within itself a commentary on that, saying that this is very much intended to be a surrealist or impressionistic fantasy of Africa in that period of time, as opposed to an exploration of true history or the humanity of these social issues. This is a story about monsters and miracles occurring in that strange setting. And the clue to the impressionistic meaning of the book is that an actual character in the story is this really miserable artist, a really great poet, a real guy named Roussel, and he had written this impressionistic book about Africa, never having been there. But it's a fantastic fantasy of Africa. And the point is saying, like, this is that. This is a fantasy. It's not the real thing. It's meant to be that. It's a beautiful piece of impressionist writing. The irony of having a character in the story that is both a real biographical person and also an autobiographical insert is quite ironic. One other complaint about the book that I saw a lot is that the writing can be a little too poetic. It can be a little annoying or confusing. It won't specifically describe things that it like should describe, but it's kind of being sneaky about it. Or it does this thing that I actually find amazing that I've seen in a couple of places, particularly the first Gunslinger book. It will describe something absolutely incorrectly. It will use the incorrect adjective and an incorrect noun, but somehow it will convey exactly the thing that it needs to. Like, it will be correct, and it will put the right vision in your mind using the wrong words. This book does that quite a bit. And I don't know, if you're not locked in with that, if you're not vibing with it, it might not work at all. Because there are sections where, especially the first time I read it, I was like, what? Like, can't you just describe what just happened? Why are you being so sneaky? Like, just say what it is. But it's a very deliberate how it leaves things out and how it kind of has fuzziness to it. There's things it doesn't want you to know on purpose. On the back is a blurb from Terry Gilliam. And if you don't know who that is, he was the animator in Monty Python, with the big foot and blowing trumpets out the butt. All those crazy animations. And he later went on to make all these kind of Monty Python-ish films that were pretty awesome. And then he made like more artistic films. And so that's kind of his niche over the last many decades. And so he made movies like one of my favorite movies ever, possibly my favorite, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, Zero Theorem, Brazil, 12 Monkeys. And almost always his movies go over budget. He's like a nightmare to studios. He just sucks to make a movie because he does whatever he wants. It's all practical. It's insane. He would be like the perfect person to adapt the Vorrh into a film. Like, that would be so unbelievable. I also always want to mention that Terry Gilliam, who I'm talking about, this film director, He was J.K. Rowling's pick to do Harry Potter 1. That was who she wanted. But they just knew he would mismanage it. The money thing wouldn't work out. He would make something really bizarre and crazy that like might not appeal to kids. So it just was a little bit too much of a gamble. But man, that would have been a crazy set of movies if Terry Gilliam had been at the helm of it. And probably wouldn't have seen the light of day for whatever reason. A mystery box. Mystery box is what I'm calling the genre of teal meme. The idea is it plants seeds, it gardens things, and it doesn't resolve all those things, but it resolves thematically. And so it leaves you, the audience, to interpret it, to explore it, to look for secrets, Easter eggs, connections. It's very allowing of that sort of behavior because it knows we live in an age where people pick things apart like that if it's good. If you hide the Easter eggs, they will find them. This is teal meme storytelling, in my opinion. Lost, Twin Peaks, Five Nights at Freddy's in terms of the lore, the Matrix series, in general, the work of David Lynch. I'm kind of amassing all these, like, what I find fascinating, what I find to be the genre of teal meme art is the mystery box. The work of art that actually interplays with culture itself, that where the audience is, to some extent, a participant in it. A note about the author, Brian Catling. This was his first real book. Like, he wrote poetry, he was an art professor, and he did all these performances and exhibits about cyclopses. Like, that was his thing. He was a known guy. He was praised in the academic world. But the Vorrh was this just unique trilogy of books. He wrote the 3 and then died. It's unclear whether they're concluded, but he probably would have written more if he had lived. That is the contention, I believe. Just like Twin Peaks, what I'm saying is if you read this first book, it will be just as resolved as if you read the whole trilogy. And if you wrote 1,000 of them, they would keep being just as resolved. Same thing as like A Song of Ice and Fire. You know, if they're written in the same way forever, there'll just be more and more and more questions. That is an intentional strategy of the mystery box. You answer just enough to keep it thematically interesting and to guide the reader. So the one thing I do want to spoil for you, and I would have wanted it spoiled for me too, is that yes, this is a mystery box. That means that no, there won't be some really neat, tidy way that everything in this story makes sense. So don't even worry about that. The way it makes sense is through exploring the themes and what it means in your life. But we won't ever know where a lot of these weird things came from, where they're going, what the point of them is. That's not really how to read a mystery box. In mystery box, the solution is extremely open-ended, and there's many suggestions. It could be ghosts, it could be gods, it could be angels and demons, it could be futuristic technology, it could be some magical thing, it could be some psychological thing. You leave it totally open in that sense so that it could be all these different things, and you never really tell what it is. That's a mystery box. Who is the character you play as in Five Nights at Freddy's? How does the magic work in A Game of Thrones? What is the meaning or point of any David Lynch film? God rest his soul. Binocular vision in the bicameral brain. This is what I got out of it. This is the primary theme of the first book. So in this story, it's post-World War I. It's in colonial Africa. But there's a few characters that are biographically real. There's this Dr. Henry Gull, I believe. He was one of the Jack the Ripper suspects. But in this story, he's a doctor who works with weird lenses, like some science fiction steampunk lens thing. And he treats a real dude, Edward Muybridge, who keeps changing his name. So it's a real character, and he kind of invented the predecessor of film. He has this famous video of a horse running, and it kind of looks like it flies. But he took these really accurate, really causal films of things and kind of invented a medium. So he was sort of a genius. In his real life story, I guess he had a horrible carriage accident that kind of messed him up, both like physically, neurologically, and psychologically. In this book, in the science fiction of it, this lens device fixes his vision because something happened where the bicameral vision was like broken or skewed. And this machine somehow fixes it so that it becomes sort of that cyclops vision, that monological vision. And so he becomes extremely determined and like antisocial, and he stops caring about human beings and just wants to advance his work of capturing the souls of things with his camera, which again, the camera is a very like monological situation. There's a lot of exploration of photography and notions of capturing the soul, stealing the soul, the way that photography replaces real moments. Of course, that's expanded on in our time many times over. The suggestion seems to be that duality, the bad and the good of duality, are created by our dual nature, our symmetrical nature, and oneness could be achieved with a cyclopean nature. But we're centauric, mind-body. We're dualists, and relationships are dualistic. The me and you of relationships is dualistic. The Cyclops is this sort of super character that is a jerk, doesn't like people, is antisocial basically, but is striving towards a holy purpose, a divine purpose, to seek wisdom or to perfect some art or perfect some purpose. Male-female duality is explored a lot in this story and really beautifully told. A lot of different examples of strange codependent relationships of power, relationships of passion, transformative relationships. We have this character, Sirena, who is gifted. When the Cyclops touches her, she's able to see, whereas prior she had been blind. So vision, again, being a theme. And in this case, as she is gifted with the miracle of sight, she kind of finds it annoying. She kind of finds it intrusive. She kind of liked the privacy of having no vision, and she kind of finds vision blunt. So yet again, we're kind of exploring like what vision does to consciousness. And is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Are we doing it right? The main kind of starting point of the plot is this really in the middle of things situation. We've had the possession wars between the magicians and the colonists, and apparently it was a pretty hard struggle, but it resulted in a sort of switching of sides, a sort of John Smith colonist character who joins the indigenous people and starts a relationship with a shaman that he rescued. And then you have Sungali, was originally a warrior in the possession wars and was defeated and was made to serve these white men. And so now they're pitted against each other because the shaman has transformed physically into a bow and arrow by being shaped into one physically, which is nasty, but her own desire, and she still kind of lives within the bow. And then Peter Williams, one of the Williams, is that John Smith character. He's using her to go and find the center of the Vorrh, because nobody can find it. It's just, we have bicameral minds. We can't find our way to the center of the Vorrh. We're lost and we have sin. So the Vorrh will confuse you. The Vorrh will consume you. It's bad news. You'll lose your mind. You'll forget everything. So the only way he can get in there is he takes this bow made out of this shaman woman and he fires an arrow, that monological single, one-directional, simple as pie arrow. That'll take him into the Vorrh. Meanwhile, Sungali is hunting him because he's been sent by the colonists to take care of this incursion or whatever it may be, rebellion. And so they've switched roles here. That duality is kind of switched over, and that's explored a lot. And then you have yet a third character, this sort of samurai character named Sidris, who is a protector of the Vorrh. So he's actually going after Sungali now. So there's this sort of third wheel murder pact going on where they're all hunting one another. If the colonist goes indigenous, can he be more as indigenous as the indigenous person? And likewise, how can these values taint a person from their nature to a different nature? So each of these characters has crossed over from level 4 to level 2, level 2 to level 4. They've taken on those characteristics and sort of, in Williams's case, he's sort of the best of both worlds. And in Sungali's case, he kind of is starting his journey as the worst of both worlds, a sort of defeated character. And so I'll read a passage from Peter Williams. For some reason, his parts are all told in first person, and those are like the only things in first person. I kind of associate that with like mental presence, like a state of consciousness. And then the Sungali section where he's hunting him, just to get a little flavor for the sort of the way it talks. I feel as if I have been asleep too long. My dreams, if they are dreams, are always in advance of my sleep, awaiting me to continue their tale, to unwind their continuity. In daylight they ache continuously. I have become bewildered by their closeness and my distance. I have been swallowed to this spot of land, the previous arrows stitching the way to here. I cannot see the bow, which must have fallen beneath me, lying somewhere in this place of contradiction, where it smells of snow and glows humid. My feet had held the ground before, but now I am unattached, and the roots and sinews of my pain nag at my hope in dopey, vague wafts. I am being erased by familiarity, the sense of knowing this journey from before. The arrow's path has made me as vacant as the half-light landscape around me. Sungali watched the afternoon arrive. He had moved his camp again. He was becoming familiar with the patch of land that would be his killing ground. The spirit of his victim would be offered to his ancestors, and the ritual of its transmutation would occur here in this valley, the name of which he did not know. He sat by the fast water, enjoying its speed, its splendid indifference, and its rippling sound, silently observing the wading birds with their shrill curl of beak and voice. He drank deeply of life so that he knew the taste of it here, knew the vibrant wealth of its dominion, knew exactly what he was taking from the man who would die on this ground. Looking upriver, he tried to remember the great forest that brooded there. It had been a long time since he once saw it. His visual memory was dimmer than its legends and his grandfather's stories of it. There's so much more in this book that I didn't cover, but just a quick exploration of themes, just a quick taste of what's in the book and why I love it so much. I really encourage you to go out there, get the whole trilogy, read them, let me know what you think. And I just would love more people to read these books and get as much fulfillment out of them as I did. I have to say, through exploring this book, in a relationship, out of the relationship, in terms of the relationship, this was an incredible growth experience for me. I feel like this book communicated to me a perspective that I was somewhat blind to, with that vision theme again, or maybe that I wasn't seeing both sides of. So this book has really helped me to open up to a whole other side of reality. Hopefully it influences people coming from that other side to also open up to this side. Thank you for letting me share this with you all by myself. I'm like the only person in my world who cares about this book. Again, it's just like everything I present on this show, thing I care about a lot that just doesn't seem to get as much love as I feel like it ought to and it deserves. Maybe Terry Gilliam needs to make that movie. Is he dead? I don't think so. So yeah, make that damn movie. I'm going to do one other art thing, but I'm still on task here, guys. I've wanted to do this for years. All right. Still on task. I am going to talk about a little bit more about art, but more core content in the works, among other things. I'm really busy. I'm sorry. And namaste. Allow yourself to feel a growing peace within yourself. Feel yourself as the stationary tree swaying in a wind that is practically still. You are nothing but life right now. Just pure life. Pure, subtle, glowing, radiant life. Clear away the filters, flex that muscle, open that eye, move into the proper position. You know what to do. You will be guided and you will go. And it will be joyful, and it will be wonderful. It's just your place. It goes on forever and ever. That houses your most sacred treasures. Know that those reside within you. As you return, and go about your wonderful day.